Hi there, and welcome to Plant CEO. In today's episode, I have the pleasure to introduce George Gill, the CEO of the Vegan Society. Hi, George, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Annette. Thank you for inviting me along. Yes.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Can we start by touching on your career background, actually?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Yeah, I started in brand licensing many years ago. And what that involved was apparel clothing, which was for some of the blue chip sort of companies out there. And just to give you an indication, it was the likes of Warner Brothers, Disney, Silicon Graphics, United International Pictures, and just to give you the era of when that was United, the films such as the Sergeant Bilko, American President, the Bodyguard itself, and really that gave me the understanding of what production was in apparel and what was licensing, obtaining licensing contracts, fulfilling the end product, and sending them across wherever they were required around the world, really. And that sort of led into my career path going into importing, exporting, whether it was the apparel, then moving into the FMCG world. And this was new product development. And normally it was just either having a brand that existed somewhere else in the world and you would import it in and sell it to the retailers or to the wholesalers, or it was a case of finding the product, developing a new product from scratch within a territory, finding the factory, and then presenting it as a brand back to the retailers, and then who would put it on their shelves to the consumer. So very enjoyable, very knowledgeable, both sort of back-to-back sort of careers there. And then I took a sort of completely different dive into property and decided that I wanted to have a go in selling properties in Dubai. And realized that although Dubai was absolutely brilliant place to be, it just didn't connect with me. I just felt it was a little bit unethical for my likes. And so as I stepped back from that, but still wanted to remain in property itself, I decided to sell property in Spain along the Costa del stretch, which is from Malaga all the way to Marbella. And again, you've got the sunshine, which was brilliant. You had the sea and you had the sand, and then it was the best job ever by selling properties to people who absolutely wanted to be there. So whether it was a rental market or whether it was making somebody's dream come true, it was brilliant. And leading on from that, it involved sort of commercial finance. So dabbled into the commercial finance. And that sort of gives you the background of understanding finance again. It's unregulated industry, the commercial finance, so it's pretty easy to get into. And then sort of went on to do other things. I took time out, and I went into logistics. That was my very last job before I started at the Vegan Society. And then in 2009, I applied to become the head of BD at the Vegan Society. Why? I just felt that I needed to give something back to society. That was more than anything else. And the excitement of working for a charity, which I've never did in the past, that was really exciting. And having this element of licensing, which I sort of knew from the back of my hand anyway, it made perfect sense. So it's sort of like, well, hang on, I'm going to contribute something back to society. I'm going to work for an NGO. And it also involves something that I've enjoyed doing over the years in the past. So it became very appealing. And I went for an interview, got through and was offered the job. So that was the start of the journey in 2009.
Yeah. And you'd actually turned vegan before that, before actually joining the Vegan Society. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct. I was always lacto vegetarian from birth. And in my journey, perhaps going to college, university, peer pressures of friends more than any time, perhaps lunchtime and evenings or finishing late. The whole sort of peer pressure, perhaps going into the restaurants such as Burger King or something, or being on a late night, the burger van. The peer pressure kicked in of trying something or unknowingly, not knowingly what I'm about to try. So I did go off track of trying certain dishes and burgers that I shouldn't have really done. As time progressed, this sort of news got back to to my grandma, and she was a very spiritual person, very well connected with the family, and sort of almost hated me for creating this sin in the family, and sort of decided to stop talking with me, and we stopped talking for a while, and said, don't talk to me until you've stopped eating sort of meat, and as time progressed, and every time I was having this sort of burgers or meat burgers or anything, I would just get ill. A day or two later, I don't know what would happen in my body. I would just feel sick. I would be ill, wouldn't feel right. It didn't take long to sort of work two and two out to say, well, actually, that's not good for me. And in order to stay, get to 4, I need to stop eating these products. And the moment I did that, my relationship with my grandma was okay again. It was like almost you've been forgiven, you've been blessed again to carry on with your sort of journey. And I remained lacto vegetarian for years after that. And as time progressed, just looking at health purposes, just to understand health, what can you do better in your diet? A reduction in your diet. So meat was already taken out of the equation, and really it came down to the 2 products, which was the dairy itself. So one would have been milk, the other one would have been cheese, and not so much of the yogurt. I wouldn't say I was a great fan of yogurt anyway, but nevertheless, the options are there, and so I thought, well, okay, that's going to be an easy issue. Just take these products out and try a vegan diet, and I didn't actually find it that much problematic for myself. The cheese was an issue. I think I just had to discover other ingredients that you could choose. The cheeses perhaps in those sort of days, the vegan alternative cheese was not the best. It didn't look great. I didn't want to try it. It looked awful, tasted awful. And so one of the key things in my background, in my sort of mind was that, can't we get, when we travel, there's always these alternative cheeses. Can't we get those cheeses into the UK somehow? And this is a question just bubbling in the back of my head. And so I decided to go vegan by reading just general spiritual books, and realize, well, actually, if you can go one more step, maybe you're doing less karma. And taking that and taking the words from my grandma, and thought, well, okay, let's just go for this and let's just see what happens. I was waiting for that magical sort of moment where something really is going to happen. But other than to just changing those few things in your ingredients and feeling good, and believing in your ethics and that you're doing something better, and then that's where the journey started for me, which was to understand, well, actually, this journey is not just about myself. It is actually taking a further step in helping the animals. So it's helping that industry. It is reduction in climate change, carbon footprint. And these are the questions that I had, but didn't really have the answers to until sort of now, where we have sort of further evidence based on all these sort of things. And so, yeah, I was vegan before I joined the Vegan Society. And that was a part of the deal, that if you're joining the Vegan Society, you've got to be able to be on a vegan diet and understand what does the vegan society stands for. So yeah, it went hand in hand. Enjoyed my time as running the department there.
Yeah. And going back to your grandmother, I think you've got a lot of things to thank her for that, being such a strong soul.
Absolutely.
Give you that ultimatum in a way.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, she was a lovely person. She was very generous, very offering, and I think she sort of already knew this naturally, the organic side of food, but just a way of different generation gap, just never knew how to connect with with the likes of myself in a way of explaining it. And if I look back now, I would say a lot of her cooking just naturally happened to be vegan, unless perhaps there might have been butter used coming from an Indian family. That was a very natural ingredients that was used. I mean, in today's world, it's more of the olive oil, but I think she always had that healthy sort of option eating, that organic side of products to put on the table. But absolutely, I have to thank her for this. Yes.
Yeah. And so you were, I think you were two years already vegan, and then you joined was it 2009? Did you say?
Yeah, 2009, April 2009.
And so the Vegan Society actually turned 75 last year in 2019. Yep. So it's just not a modern fad. So can you tell me about the background and what changes that you've seen since being also the CEO?
In 2009, when I joined, it was almost, the message was, look, this is the Vegan Society. This is the oldest original vegan society by the founder, Donald Watson. This is the chap who coined the word vegan. And so there was something about this that, well, hang on, this is an organization been going for so long, since 1944. How come nobody knows about this? How come it's sort of like tucked away in the UK sort of, and not everybody is familiar with this. It's registered as an educational charity. That's a great thing. So we're supposed to be then educating people about veganism or about health, about, you should consume less dairy, less meat. So why we're not doing this? One of the key issues, like any NGO, is that if you don't have the funding in the organization, you can't progress with your campaigns or your outreach to the audience. And when I joined, I believe there were between 10 and 11 staff in 2009. A very small amount of revenue coming in. And my first day actually was at a show that I started in London, and it was called the NOP show. It stands for Natural Organic Products Europe. And it was the show where I had just come off from my annual leave as a holiday. I was going to start the new job, went straight to London, and the chair and the CEO were there, my boss, and it was quite different that we had almost a 6 square foot meter of space with one tablecloth, which happened to be green with a sort of a gold sort of symbol on the front of Vegan Society, with a few literatures. And where I looked on the left and the right, everybody's stands were huge, and we were sort of like a drop in the ocean trying to say, and trying to promote veganism. It just didn't work. And I highlighted that at that point, that in a couple of years' time, we're going to create a vegan pavilion in the same place. And then get told, well, we actually don't have the clear funding to do this, So it's like going back to the drawing board, create a strategy, create a plan, introduce how we're going to get the revenue coming in, incoming revenue, and how we're going to reach those goals. And to where we are now, we're almost we're over 50 and under 60 staff today. So just over a decade. This is how much surge veganism has had within the vegan society itself of the growth. And a part of that is that the licensing side of things just went completely through the roof.
Mm.
Initially, it was a very struggle with brands not understanding what veganism was. There were brands and companies, which I won't mention, who had actually said to me, well, actually, can you leave our stand because we don't want anybody from the vegan society devaluing our brand by standing on or by visiting us. And I said, well, that's fine. Look, we're there. We're not going anywhere. But, in years to come, you will be coming back to us and you will be obtaining a vegan trademark for your product. Whether it's going to be yourself or somebody else within your organization, you will have to change this market. And the bizarre thing is those same companies now actually hold the vegan trademark for their products. So this is how much in 10 years things have changed.
That was a good win.
Absolutely a win-win all the way.
Yeah, especially when you have these larger companies, who is also an opportunity for those companies to get your, trust trademark on their products, especially if their products are actually already vegan.
Yes. I mean, having it clearly labeled with a trademark, it's a clear message to consumers. And initially, consumers didn't actually understand what vegan was. So the vegan community and anybody who was a vegan, it was a clear message to them that, oh, right, I don't need to look at the back of this product, or if I am looking at the back of the product, it has a clear mark, clear vegan trademark. It's all the checks have been done for me. The other thing was, it was a campaign within its own right. And the way that was that if a vegan was a natural product was vegan, and a consumer's picking it up, and somebody who's saying, well, actually, I don't understand this vegan, and it's a dietary requirement. There's something unhealthy about this, and you can only be consumed by a vegan, but I'm not a vegan. So one of the other things was that the products that are picked up by most consumers on a daily basis that happen to be naturally vegan, if they are then labeled vegan, then the consumer says, well, actually, I've been having this product for most of my life, and this is a vegan product. So what's the big deal?
Mm.
And then the question becomes, well, what is the big deal? All right, okay, these ingredients is, therefore, it could be as simple as having something from a milk powder. If those could be replaced, taste is not compromised and replaced by synthetic flavoring. Therefore, now you have a vegan product, and therefore you've opened doors to completely new consumers, and that visibility on the front then leads to another question. Well, why vegan, and so on, and the mind is curious, and therefore hopefully they might visit the Vegan Society website page.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's where the journey starts.
Yeah, and just in terms of your website, organically, it's ranked the #1, right? Is that in certain markets, or is that like globally? If you type the word vegan,
it's pretty global. It's pretty global on a. I mean, Google will work in a different way, but over the years, it's ranked as #1. And I think that for that particular ranking, it's just because the vegansociety.com was always there. And as a part of the organic growth, it's had so much traffic driven to it. I think it'll always remain ranked as #1. And over the years, where other organizations or questions might be asked around veganism, well, they'll put vegan into the Google, and it'll probably take them to the Vegan Society page, and they'll say, right, let's ask the Vegan Society for their opinion.
Yeah.
What is their suggested, and so on. And so we do get emails across, I mean, over the decade, we've had emails from every part of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thinking about the UK specifically, I know there were some studies done a few years ago with some numbers that, you know, how many vegans are there from that last study? And I know you're looking potentially to do some new studies around that, but where would you place it? What was the last study? Was it something like 600,000? That was a few years back, but we think it's a lot more than that.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. It was over 600,000. And I think it's a lot more than that at the moment. There's not a clear survey being done. There are numbers which are going around, and the Vegan Society is looking to do further surveys into this. There's certainly more products. There's certainly more vegan range available, whether it's food, cosmetics, skincare, toiletry, and now stretching as far as footwear, accessories, and clothing. So it's not just from, if you take that survey, even if you double that survey and say it was between 1.4, 1.5 million as an example now, well, surely those 1.4 or 1.5 million vegans are not all dashing out, getting all these products and surging the sales for every single product in the industry.
Yeah, it's the flexitarians, isn't it, that are driving the growth of these products?
I would absolutely agree with you. I think it is the flexitarians who are taking the growth, and I think it is the meat eaters as well who are trying to reduce meat in their diet, whether it be once a week or whether it be once a month. There is so many new unique products in the market now, from every produced in the UK and sort of imported into the UK, that the taste and texture in every sort of category is a new product. And this, it might not be everybody's taste buds, but you know, people are willing to give it a go.
Yeah.
But are they willing to give it a go?
Yeah, and they're giving it a go. Maybe it's for the health reasons. Maybe it's the spiritual connection that you spoke about before. But more importantly, it's also to do with the environment and climate change, right? I think that's the bigger picture, especially here, that seems to resonate a lot in the UK.
Yeah, I think the climate change with the current generation, the next generation, it's a big topic. You have celebrities, you have leaders in the world who talk about climate change. And one of the simplest way to contribute towards that climate change is making a change in your diet. And if you can make a change in your diet, that is then having a reduction in carbon footprint. If it's having a reduction in the carbon footprint, it's having a snowball effect into the end result. And in order to achieve that, you have to have these alternative products. One might not like one particular type of alternative meat products to a different brand or a different category. And this is why it's important to have these available, as well as having that whole sort of message. Why is somebody doing this? And I think the message is coming across to consumers in a way that some are just doing it because they love the taste. Some are doing it because they love, actually it's a reduction in their health. The others are perhaps doing it for climate change. And I think in all of this, you have a huge amount of animal lovers. And whether people keep cats and dogs as companion animals, or whether they go to then go to the supermarket to buy a product which is of a meat industry, you know, the connection somewhere along the line is lost. And I think the way to connect them back to all of that is by giving the alternative. If you give them the alternative and a message and a journey, why they're doing it, especially if they have cats and dogs, you know, and other companion animals, you know, they should be able to connect to the whole message as time progresses.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, on that point, do you think that more needs to be done to have that association, especially with those animal lovers, that they need to have specific campaigns around that in a way?
yeah, I mean, you can have a household who love their cats, they love their gerbil, they love their perhaps even a rabbit if they have one, and dogs, and yet Sunday roast. You know, it's the completely the other end of the spectrum. So I think how does one get to that? And I think this takes, when I joined the Vegan Society, you know, it's registered as an educational charity, and there's a purpose for that. So it is the educational. It is about a campaign. You've got to campaign. You've got to get the message across in very simple words why one should look into this, why should they adopt this, and what are going to be the benefits for this. And as that message is passed on to consumers, and I think there's a massive duty from the retailers on this as well. And if the, you know, if you are stocking X amount of products which are labeled vegan, but the message is not passed on to the consumers, well, okay, this, you know, this is to accommodate vegans, but order a vegan product, but there is no other sort of story to add on to that. Why are we doing this? Why is the journey all of a sudden surging in veganism? Then consumers are lost. And the best way to connect with consumers is by either the online shopping or by the retailers themselves. And retailers can sell a very powerful message if they wish to do this. And I think they will adopt to this because they're all stocking more and more vegan products. And why is this increasing the search? So they know this is the future.
Yes.
And
yeah.
And I think it is a competition, I suppose, within retailers to who's the first to do this, that, and you know, once everybody's done it, everybody will follow that sort of message across.
Yeah, and Asda, for example, have created their own vegan aisle now. They've also got it as a kind of an aisle on their website, and then you've got the rise of other e-commerce retailers like the Vegan Kind, the supermarket, who are also creating their own shops specifically for these products. So there's a lot more that needs to be done in a faster way that other supermarkets need that to happen. And you're speaking to these supermarkets all the time. Do you think they'll also get there quite quick, maybe even this year, to get for the growth for even January, for example, where people start looking at their new dietary changes after having Christmas and New Year's, etc.?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. I mean, you know, being in the FMCG world, I know how the planning sort of works, and
cycles,
doesn't just land on the shelf within the following week. It normally takes about a year and a half's worth of planning. So if something is within a major retailer turns up on the 1st of Jan, it's because they've had the plans from the last 12 to 18 months in the background. And by the time that product is there, whether it's a seasonal product, whether it's a fresh start to the 2021, it's already been signed off within their own organization. That is, you know, I think there's a competition within the major retailers who can do better. The other issue is price point. Why, you know, if it's a vegan product, if it's better for you, and it has all the other advantages added onto it for the climate change, we shouldn't be paying a premium price. So the whole economics of scale on this is that it is produced in a volume to bring the price point down so it's affordable to the consumer. So it really needs to be like for like. You know, you put the two products side by side. This is a non-derived animal product to an animal-derived product. This has to be better in every way, not only taste-wise, looks-wise, texture-wise, branding-wise, price-wise, but most importantly, why is that person doing it? Why is that consumer actually picking that? Even if there was a little extra price to it, but why are they making that difference? I think consumers are willing. I can think consumers have sort of understood this over the years as many new programs come about. What's in your product? What is it about the ingredients is? Why we're doing this? So the story is there, but I think there is a massive surge. There's a competition amongst all of them to do better, to have this key responsibility. 10 years ago, if you talk to the supermarket about veganism, they'll tell you to bugger off. It's as simple as that. And today we get calls from these supermarkets, emails, asking us as the Vegan Society to assist them or to help them. What should we do next? How do we influence the market? Which is a massive step.
Yeah, massive change.
A massive change. With the ASDA, it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Once we had the conversations with ASDA, and that we said that whichever supermarket goes out first to roll this out in every aisle as they develop, you are capturing the market, you are capturing audience, you are capturing a message, and you are contributing that message back out. So it's not only consumers have one place to sort of shop, but also to share that campaign and message, why veganism, and why the vegan product and so on. Why is it good for you? And I think the journey hasn't just sort of reached its peak, or it's declining, or it's ended, or it's saturated. I think the journey's just started now.
Yeah, totally. And where do you see the challenges around veganism? I think obviously there's some FMCGs that are looking at the word vegan in a negative way, which is, I think, is unfair. But using the softer approach of plant-based, being more diet related than the overall lifestyle of veganism.
Yeah, I think that's the new sort of soft approach, the very soft approach where consumers are sold this. And I think you see TV adverts where perhaps from a dairy-free margarine to a cosmetic or hair conditioning or shampoo, which is sold, and it's powered by plant-based. I think it's the new sort of ingredients to say this is better because it's natural, rather than saying it's vegan, and vegan sort of takes you to that vegan lifestyle. I think it's just a matter of time before plant-based will be there. I think it will slowly fade out and veganism will be more often be used. I think there are some brands which are now have just decided, well, actually, let's just drop the plant-based and let's just go vegan because, one, it's less characters anyway than plant-based, so it takes space from a packaging perspective and wording perspective. I think the issue from perhaps the brands and the retailers is that and this comes back to the point of education, that not everybody quite fully understands what vegan is. And they might get confused with vegetarian, or take, well, yeah, I know what vegan is, but not actually fully understand the whole sort of journey of it. And with plant-based, it's sort of a self-explained. Plant-based, it's produced from plants. And just because it's labeled plant-based doesn't necessarily mean it's actually vegan. So there might be an ingredients that might be animal derived in a process it's a plant-based product, but there's something being used in the process of it. With the vegan, it's at least you know that it's 100% vegan. That's a massive difference.
We spoke about the fish guts as a filtering mechanism, for example. Even though it's not in the product itself, the process defines the end result.
Absolutely. So the likes of soft drinks, apple juice, wines, the filtration process using animal fats or fish's bladder, isinglass, it's up the chain in the manufacturing process. It doesn't need to be labeled onto the packaging and say, well, while we were producing this, we used this in order to filter your product so it's nice and clear for you when you pour it into your glass. You will, I mean, taking this as an example, you will see apple juice in cartons where they are clearly labeled as vegetarian or vegan. And that's exactly what it's saying, that they have not used, or they have filtered it, but it's been filtered synthetically. It's not filtered with using any bladder involved or fish's bladder. And, a little story on that one is, I've upset a few people by telling them, even on the apple juice, and some on certain wines as well. And then people said, well, I've been vegetarian for many years, and or I've been lacto vegetarian, or I've been a vegan. Well, I didn't know that. I didn't even think that was possible. Or why would a processor do that for? Why did the manufacturer do that for? So I've ended up being their worst nightmare scenario by informing them. But at least I've informed them, and then they can make a choice. And there, as many products there are, they are quite clearly labeled. And I think manufacturers and the retailers have a duty now, and there's a lot of information available on each of the supermarket's website. If you're unsure, you can always send them an email, and they have to give you the information that whether the product is clearly labeled as vegan or not. And that's an important part, yeah. And same with, something just stretching from there, it's an old one. I think a lot of people are aware of this, which is the shellac, which goes on to a lot of the fruits, such as the apple. This is the shine that goes on there, and you get shellac which is into cosmetics as well, especially like the nail varnish, to give that glossy sort of finish, which comes from
shellac is basically, the crushed beetle skin to give it
that. Absolutely. Yeah. And there was some of the consumers that I'm aware and vegans were picking up where sometimes it was labeled as organic, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have shellac on it. So it's organic, the product's organic, but it still might have shellac on it. So the best way to that is, there's less of it now. There is less of it, and you will go into certain supermarkets where they will clearly label it as no wax, rather than shellac, because not everybody is familiar with it. So they say, there's no wax added onto eggs or the lemons or the oranges or the apples.
Yeah.
But not every supermarket is doing that. And if you're unsure, the best thing you can do is just warm it up in sort of lukewarm water and
wash it all off. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably the best way.
Yeah. And, there has been a massive surge, with veganism especially the last few years. Obviously the supermarkets have seen it with their search results, with people typing the term in, and the search engines too. In the UK, especially with like Greggs, for example, did a lot of work in that space to encourage the growth of their vegan sausage rolls. And a lot of other companies in that sort of, I guess, more the fast foodie space, the snacking element have also helped, and with also the supermarkets now creating their own ranges of those sorts of products. I think the other thing that we spoke about was Beyond Meat. What are your thoughts around them and what they've done to encourage the growth of companies and investors to also come into this space?
Yeah, Beyond Meat shocked the world. They shocked the whole industry of meat and dairy, veganism, plant-based. They sort of started a decade ago in their R&D, and a decade later they decided to launch their products, which they couldn't, supply and demand, they couldn't produce enough. And in order to sort of expand, they needed to raise further capital, and they went for an IPO, which was, I believe, around about the $50 per share mark. At the end of the day, when they closed, I think they closed around about the $120 or $130 a share, giving the company a valuation of well over probably between $3 and $4 billion US dollars. a phenomenal surge. The talk of Beyond Meat, just from a financial perspective, was that it turned every head in the industry, from investors to the stock markets to the wealth management, that this is a plant-based burger company starting from nowhere. How can you have such a valuation in the billions?
Yeah, I mean now they're over 10 billion market cap, which is phenomenal.
Absolutely. Within a few months,
Yeah.
It was about 3 months later, they went over to, I think at one point it was just over the 10. I think it was more like 12 billion. And then, as you rightly said, they might be hovering around about 10 billion US dollar. Now, happened in the industry, in the meat and dairy industry, all the heads turned and say, well, hang on, we've been going for years and 50, 60, 70 years plus. Our company valuation is nowhere near that. And all of a sudden, all the meat and dairy industry and other producers decided, right, the next move, R&D, research and development, let's get our plant-based products out there. Because we'd like to have a valuation. The difference between the two is that one is driven by projections, wealth, and financial profits, whereas the other one has a message.
It's the mission that's important, right?
That message is the most important thing. And I think this is where a lot of the commercials are completely, or they may be even torn apart within two different departments or two different boards amongst their organization, because one will be very on the left and the other one will be on the right, and they're very strong about climate change and all the possibilities of veganism. And that's why Beyond Meat is doing so well, because they've got a clear message from the beginning, what they're trying to achieve. Whereas the commercials are trying to jump on and say, well, we want to take market share here. And so that then leads you to companies which might get taken over by commercials for the wrong reasons. So you have an SME, a small medium enterprise. They have a clear message, a clear goal. They want to remain ethical as possible. They want to have a vegan products. They take it to so far in the industry, then they sort of get muscled out, or they get bought out by a corporate just to add on to their balance sheet, rather than continue that journey of ethical and veganism. I think this is a massive, massive problem at the moment, what's happening in the industry. And I think unless the venture capitalists, the JVs, joint ventures, and the wealth management do not introduce funds quick enough into the market, and they are sustainable funds, then all the sheer hard work and graft is it's taking you back to ground zero again.
Yeah. So we definitely need to still encourage more investment into this space to encourage the next Beyond Meats to come up, and also hopefully in the future remain independent in a way if they get to the IPO stage.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not just going to be Beyond Meat. There's going to be thousands. I wouldn't say hundreds. There's going to be thousands of companies which are going to be coming onto the market, which are already in the pipeline. And some companies are going through the R&D process. And one of the key areas of that R&D is protein. So you always have this sort of question around about the protein. Well, meat produces protein for the consumer. Well, no, you can get alternative protein. And whether it be pea protein, chickpea protein, whether it be mushrooms, the future food of tech is where this is all happening. And the quicker the tech innovation around the protein and development of the ingredients is, are available on a mass sort of scale, then that introduces new products into the market all the time.
Yeah.
And, this is where the tech and the food
Combine.
Combine together, collaborate together, and create those new products.
Yeah. And we've also seen that, especially this year, people really examining their diet and making changes to the diet due to COVID. And obviously the effect of a lot of the breakouts of COVID within workers in the factory farms, especially here in the UK and in the US, has made people rethink. So it's a good time to consider making dietary choices that are both ethical, looking after the planet, and even David Attenborough is encouraging people to go plant-based now. So we're seeing more and more celebrities come out and encourage. What do you think needs to be done over the next few years? What's the future for the vegan society in terms of, I guess, messaging and, areas to focus on?
I think we've already started on having the message we've just launched a campaign which is called Future Normal. And to sort of share that is basically connecting individuals, families, and the message with the animals again. We used to do this, and what sort of happened down that journey. We got told that if you're in the gym, that meat's good for you. Is it really good for you? There's the protein that from the meat. Is that really good for you? And what happened? What's the alternative? And this all sort of links back to that education again and campaigns. The more the information from every organization that's going to be out there about veganism, and from the Vegan Society, like I said, we've already started on the Future Normal campaign, but the message will be introduce the plant-based diet, the vegan diet into your health. Let it start once a week. Let it start once a month. You're making those changes, and everybody at every point has a key responsibility. The supermarkets have got responsibility to make those changes happen. Now, sometimes the price point is the issue. Now, in COVID, why there was a surge? Two reasons. The supermarket supply and demand sold out. There was a panic buying, stock buying. The online sales kicked in. There wasn't enough supply and demand. People were told about their health in general. In the pandemic, it was all about wash your hands, use the hand sanitizers, put your masks on, take enough vitamins, take the vitamin C, take all, but basically get everything that you can possibly can about your health. And there was a sort of a massive surge jump in online sales and retailers in plant-based foods or vegan foods. However they labeled it, however it was a sellout. And I think in the pandemic, there were certain products which were they weren't going to be launched, but they launched them and they sold out. So all of a sudden there was a surge from consumers about how their buying behavior had changed because they couldn't go to the supermarket, so they're buying online. And if they were going to the supermarket, they were limited to what they could buy ration 3 products per customer. So the vegan products, which might have been an oversupply initially, ended up selling out because the consumer had no other choice. That could be one reason. The second reason could be that let's give this a try because this is better for you, because they know it's better for you.
Yeah.
And it sold out. And since then, the range of that amount of vegan products which have come on the market in the pandemic is unbelievable.
Yeah.
The Vegan Society themselves, the trademark department in licensing, where one would say businesses have been taking a dip, business is slowing down. It's been quite the opposite for our trademark team, where it's actually they're more busier than ever before.
Yeah. And you told me before that you're working on, obviously you got the companies will apply for the license, but you're also planning to do some things around startups to help encourage them to get the trademark. So that's something that's upcoming that you're working on.
Yes, that's correct. And the Vegan Society is looking into that, and they're reviewing this right now as we're sort of speaking, where they're encouraging new startups with perhaps a payment plan for them. And how will they be able to support them, not just from the licensing perspective, but how will they be able to support all these clients of ours to get their products to the next stage? Now, that doesn't mean necessarily as an organization we will be physically taking their products in front of the buyers, but we're trying to find a way that how we're going to be channeling this through for them and make it a very easy process that they know where the doors are, which doors they need to knock on, and who they need to get to. And this is something in the pipeline right now as we sort of speak, and hopefully this might come into be introduced by early years next year.
Yep. And do you see certain cultural differences around veganism?
Yeah, there is cultural differences in veganism. I think the vegan movement initially started with, if you base it in the Western world, from animal activism and vegans, strong vegans in the sense of who were the voice for the animals. That's where that sort of culture starts from, veganism itself. If you go to the East, veganism in spiritual, I would say, has always been there, way before even the Vegan Society ever started, whether they be in the Asian continents, whether it's a spiritual, whether it's religious, it's always there, and it's never crossed to the West. And
a lot of the religious texts, it does define treating animals with compassion.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Not to brand them as well. There's most of the religious books actually say that, don't they? But somehow it's been diluted over the years.
It has, and I think in the West it's sometimes it's almost like a bubble that you forget about other sort of communities where veganism already exists, and sometimes it's compared to other territories. Well, there should be further veganism into those particular territories, and I think one doesn't know what those territories are and how the culture sort of works there. So the cultural differences are massive. I think perhaps in the East, it's what we perhaps to do one less, as in less karma, and that might be perceived as the way forward for veganism, and so taking no harm to any animal, therefore not taking any derived ingredients from the animal, so let it be dairy itself or and
I think also, like, when you think about the Eastern countries, especially like India, for example, they think if they're consuming dairy, that's not going to be bad. But eventually, the dairy consumption, whether you're having milk or cheese or paneer or yogurts, that actually relates to a piece of beef in the same way, doesn't it? I mean, that consumption drives the other; it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I think you have two things. Places like India, you have religious that you can't sort of touch base on veganism from a religious perspective. And that's a lot of hard work to sort of educate. And it's something, perhaps a topic I don't want to really go into too far. But I think if you take that health element first and you take sustainability, and even though the animals in India are treated, with the utmost respect in certain places, in depending, how sort of organic they are in what they do, and they will always treat the animals with love and compassion. But I think in today's world, most places have the internet now. If it's not a physical laptop, they'll have a mobile or a tablet. So information is available. Social media platforms are available. So it's that education of health. Consuming, like you mentioned, too much of this is no good for you. And then you need to explain why is it no good for you, and that subtle approach, and that makes a difference. And once that sort of falls in, the coin sort of drops, you move on to the next stage. Let's talk about the sustainability of the animals. And so in those kind of territories and countries, easy to just pass on the knowledge of education, but what is the real solution if they don't then have the funding to make that change? So, if you're saying animal agriculture, and not stocking livestock, but using animal agriculture in your fields, or the solution is you need modern technology to do that. But the funding might not be available from that particular country or that particular region, or so that's a solution. If it is about pea protein in agriculture itself, well, that's where the educational side of it needs to become, and then it becomes a bigger thing at a government level and lobbying and so on. But in general, just for the consumer's perspective, I think it's important that they get some form of education, at least to have a choice to make in the world. And if you bring it back to the UK, I think it's sort of perhaps it's perceived in cultural differences. One might, like I know some people personally that they've always been vegan for many years, but yet they weren't aware of the word vegan because they labeled it as pure vegetarian. And so again, that is a cultural difference.
Yeah, and these surveys need to account for those numbers of those people.
Absolutely, I think so. I think the surveys should be. You can take one survey, which will be sort of say, well, this dominates the whole of the United Kingdom. But I think if you break it down regionally into counties, you will have if you want to take perhaps the BAME itself, the BAME community itself across the board, and you can channelize these in different segments of the market or regionally in different areas and different communities. And I think you will get a different results.
Yeah. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing this future normal. I quite like that phrase that you've coined there with that campaign.
Do you remember that feeling that left you reeling? The connection you felt that made your heart melt? Do you remember what happened? Do you remember what changed when our take on the world was rearranged? When the way you see me was turned on its head? What was it they told us? What was it they said? Out on the streets, on our phones, on TV, wherever we look, it's all we can see. So, nation of animal lovers, think back to then and look into my eyes and tell me again, you love me.
So finally, where do you see the next few years for the Vegan Society actually going?
I think the next few years for us is we carry on with the journey. Like I said earlier, we're from 2009, we had about between 10 and 11 staff. To 2020, we are between 50 and 60 staff. So the aim would be next year to perhaps carry on that journey. First of all, make sure we got the resources. We carry on with the education. We carry on with the campaigns. And that doesn't mean you need to come out with new campaigns. You remain with the same campaigns, but you push them in the market and the messaging. And I think for us, we have the advocacy side where we can talk to the MPs, lobbying. There's a real issue with us leaving with Brexit and with the EU, with the governments of labeling and everything else. So you need a voice over there. That's another important part. But I think the biggest campaign for us ends up being the licensing program. And we also sell the Veg 1 supplements, which are the D3, B12s, which are designed, and they're going pretty well. So we're an education charity, and our aim is to educate people. Our aim is to make visibility. Our aim is to have the questions asked and give the answers with scientific sort of background and evidence-based, present those. And as an organization, you can only do so much. But I think as a vegan society, we've managed to do a lot with a small amount of resources, expand in a way that with having a clear sort of strategy. And I think the aim for us would be to expand our operation, I think, into other territories. So without sort of having, I think the biggest cost is expenditure. So if we don't have, in the pandemic, it's just been proven that everybody can sort of work remotely. I think this is a clear way of expanding your message and your operational side of things into new territories around the world. So I think if you take the positive from that, that means we should be able to do this a lot quicker and a lot faster. And so what is the aim on the Vegan Society completely? I think for us is you can, once you can sort of increase our membership, and we've got a clear strategy for that. We have a clear strategy that which brands we want to aim and help new starters to bring onto the market. And that would take us over the next couple of years. The visibility for consumers, not just vegans, it's consumers. So the clear visibility of the message, what is veganism? That is important and why we're doing this. And as long as we keep at this, and I think that is growth more than anything else.
Yep. So fantastic. And yeah, wish you the best of luck with the expansion, keeping up the momentum with all the work that you're doing there. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been great.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. It's been great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.